So thank you. So appreciate everyone tuning in. I see a number of you have made your way into our technical track. So thank you for coming here. What we're going to be talking about today is a pretty new option under the Oracle EPM Cloud Enterprise umbrella, which is called Freeform Planning. And we're going to be going through a little bit of background on what that means, what multidimensional modeling is. It's kind of a way to get really similar functionality to Essbase because that is the engine that lives behind the planning engine in the first place. But just in case you're not completely familiar with Essbase, we'll be covering a little bit of what that is as well, what it is, what it does, and then how we're delivering that same sort of thing now through the EPM Enterprise capability. You know, I've done an awful lot of work with healthcare payers and providers in my work doing strategic assessments along with Edward. And one thing that I have definitely noticed in both areas is that there is no shortage of data for analysis, for storage, for reporting, things we really need to be able to dig in and understand the trends and ideas that are represented by large volumes of data. Data doesn't help us very much, but organizing data into information really does. So I've worked with a lot of companies to get their data harnessed and tame that data and organize it into databases and multi-dimensional models that they are able to manage and analyze and report on and really make it useful for patients, for providers, and for profitability as well. So there's a lot of different areas that we need to track, you know, products and policies, customers, groups, as you can see here. A lot of different aspects of data that we need to harness, and some of them can get rather large. So if you're attending this session, going from the title, you probably have had a need to gather together large amounts of data before and get it organized so that you can understand it. So what we've traditionally used to do that is the Essbase engine. We're able to create a multidimensional model, load data into it, run calculations, aggregate that up, plug into it with typically the Excel add-in called SmartView, and do analysis there, as well as some other reporting tools. What we have available now within the EPM suite from Oracle is kind of a way to do that exact same thing, have control over the dimensions in a way that we never have before. So that's what this presentation is going to be about, introducing that idea, as well as kind of filling you in on how this actually is able to harness these large data sets that we have to deal with in this industry in particular. And the value proposition, if you're new to all of the concepts, why this is really great technology that we've been working with for years and years and years, and now we have this new way to deliver it. So I'll back up a little bit and make sure, if you have not experienced Essbase before, really what this is about, because this is about giving you Essbase technology and capability in the EPM cloud world. So since the late 90s, this Essbase tool has been available. Essentially, it is a way to take all of this data and identify the various common factors across all of that data, all of the way by the by. So if you want to look at data by customer, by region, by product, all of those bys we call dimensions, and then we create a model that contains not only those dimensions, but hierarchies within those dimensions. And then when I interface with that data, with that database, with a tool, it can be really powerful right through the Excel world to click and zoom in and isolate particular measures or ideas and create a grid of information that answers a question I've never thought to ask before, but it was available in the data the whole time. And now that I've thought to ask the question, I can go in and slice and dice and pivot on that information and get to this new question that the answer was in there waiting for me to ask the whole time. And then it's easy to go in and answer it. There's a lot of ways to control access to that data, the way that it's organized, and it can manage a very large volume of data. Essentially, a multidimensional model looks like this, but I have always, for years, called it a magic filing cabinet. If you think about it, if you could walk up to a filing cabinet and it provided you drawers that were labeled exactly what you need them to be right now for the question you have in mind, and the folders inside are labeled what you need them to be out. The columns and grids on the reports that are contained in those folders are exactly what I need them to be to get to the answer. That's what Essbase does for you. It allows you on the fly to figure out what are the labels on the drawers, what are the labels on the folders, what are the labels on the rows and columns to provide the information that I need right now. So it's really, really exciting. So it's a little bit of a crash course if you haven't experienced Essbase before, and hopefully not an incredibly boring, long-winded description of it for those of you that are familiar with Essbase. The state of the art on Essbase right now is Essbase 19C, which is offered through the cloud. Some of you may not have seen that yet. It's graduated from the old traditional user interfaces that we had for Essbase, EAS in particular, Essbase Administrative Services, and it has a cloud-looking interface now. So this is what the most cutting-edge Essbase users are seeing right now. They are working with it over the web, and they're also got a new Excel plugin called the Cube Designer, which allows us to take kind of our own spreadsheets and add them in to Essbase, kind of on the fly, create cubes really, really quickly. And I'm also doing a lot of the design of my databases right there in Excel and uploading that. So those of you that are Essbase customers on-prem, this could be the future for you on Essbase, but also we're going to be talking about a different potential future for your Essbase capabilities, which is the freeform. As we say, we've got this cool tool that's available within Essbase itself for the Essbase cloud versions, all those ones that are ending with C19C, 21C will be coming out at some points, hopefully early next year. But this is what we're looking at when we used to combine Essbase and planning on-prem. We would have our planning databases, our cubes, and they would contain the data that's specifically related to the plan, capital plan, revenue planning, expense, whatever it is, workforce, and they would live behind the Hyperion planning application. That's what these here in green are. We would also kind of sneak in behind and create Essbase cubes that were not directly tied to those planning applications. We could create them on our own. And we had a lot more freedom in working with those Essbase databases, because there's a thing about Hyperion planning cubes is that they have some specific requirements around dimensions. So you have to have certain dimensions, period, account, version, scenario, entity. You have to have those. So yours as well. And so we wanted always to have more flexibility, and we want to be able to create additional cubes within planning, but this dimensional requirement was holding us back. We wanted to be able to deal with dimensions in a way that we can with Essbase without those restrictions. You can go in and make the model look like whatever you want it to. The dimensions can be as many as you want. They can represent whatever you want, and they can be as deep as you want, and they contain whatever, as we call members in that hierarchy that fit the model that you have. And sometimes that doesn't work very well with the required dimensions for planning. So planning cubes themselves, we would often try to model an Essbase type database without leveraging all the dimensions that were required, because even though version was there and we had to have it, we would maybe ignore that. Like, we would allow it to exist, but we wouldn't actually use it. This makes the models more confusing. And there's a lot of other requirements around what we would have to do in creating those models within the Hyperion planning world, and even in the PBCS world. Once planning got out into the cloud, even the enterprise version, all of them had those requirements. So we've struggled with that always for as long as Hyperion planning has existed, whether on-prem or in the cloud. But now, come along in the last year plus, this whole new EPM Enterprise world, and you can see here in the model, included with all of the other things that are added in this one product, a brand new thing, which is called freeform planning, or as we say, we kind of say Essbase in the cloud, or freeform Essbase / planning hybrid cubes. This is what we're here to talk about today, because it's pretty exciting for us and our ability to have more control over our dimensions and yet have a nice, friendly Hyperion planning wrapper around that database that provides a lot of extra functionality that we can take advantage of. So the way it works is I go through the steps that are very similar to creating a planning cloud application, but along the way I can have control over those dimensions. You can sort of think of this as software as a service, Essbase being delivered software as a service the same way that the planning functionality is. I don't have to worry about the server, maintaining the server, patching the server. It's taken care of just like it is in EPM Cloud. There's a couple of ways that I can get these databases created out there. If you're using Essbase now, if you're familiar with that, we're going to walk through how that works. I can import stuff that I'm doing in Essbase now and just migrate that, and now I can use that same functionality and use it through the EPM Cloud environment and take advantage of the additional sort of cool planning stuff that goes on in there. And because of the characteristics of the engine that are out there in the cloud, I can take care of really large volumes of data using what's called the aggregate storage model, which is designed to be a version of these cubes, these Essbase models that can handle a large number of dimensions, and each of those dimensions also could be quite large, and then I can put in quite a lot of data in there. It's designed specifically to be scalable that way. I can also take advantage of the more traditional block storage engine, which is designed to allow me to do really good calculations, to go through and very systematically take data and combine it with each other and run calculations and calculate ratios or metrics or KPIs or whatever I need to do and store those back into the database. I can do allocations. There's lots of stuff that I can do there, really complex calculations. Traditionally, that has not been as scalable, and it hasn't been easy to get those numbers rolled up for analytics. There's a new version of that engine that's called hybrid. It kind of combines those two worlds. I'll be giving you some details about that in a minute. And that breaks a lot of the chains around scalability on the block storage model. So I can have all that calculation capability and the scalability and the speed of getting things aggregated. So it's the best of both worlds. So we go hybrid when we can, when it makes sense, when we need to do calculations on large scale data. So let's just walk through how we create these cubes, because this is the technical track. So people want to know how when we get in the technical track. So let's assume for the time being that you have Essbase and you have a model, and we want to bring it into the EPM Cloud Enterprise world. That's not very difficult. There's two ways that we can do it. We can take your existing outline file, which is .otl that lives out there in file system, and we can bring that in. The outline file defines the dimensions and the hierarchies and the formulas and things like that. I can also bring in a lifecycle management snapshot, which is the thing that I can do through the workspace interface, and I can capture more than just the outline. I can capture many of the other artifacts that are associated with my Essbase cube, substitution variables and report scripts and calculation formulas, things like that, and I can import a more comprehensive definition of what my cube is and not just the outline. And then thirdly, there's a new way that we can work with it where we can just start from scratch. We've got nothing. This model doesn't exist. We're going to create. It's going to be new out in the cloud. We'll walk through how to do that too. For those of you that have an EPM Cloud Enterprise product, if you've been working with that, you've probably seen a screen that looks like this, similar to this before, when you've created your application. So I'm going to walk through. I'm going to show you what it looks like to create one of these freeform ones. We're just going to click on the planning button first. So we're going to get started on planning. And then once we get in here, although there is a migrate button here, this is more for snapshots that are already been created within the cloud. We're going to go to create a new application. So it's we're kind of starting from scratch. At this point, this is exactly the same as if we're creating a normal planning application, except when we get in here, we have the ability on this drop down now to have custom and freeform and modules. So freeform is the new one here. Modules is the old EPBCS type model where I'm going to do the pre-built financials or capital or workforce or those kinds of things. I'm going to grab that kind of built-in pre-built best practices stuff that Oracle's providing. Custom is where I'm going to create my own planning application, similar that I used to do on-prem, similar that I used to do in planning and budgeting cloud service, not the non-enterprise version. But now I can click on freeform, and this is where I get started in a brand new direction. I get a couple of options here. I can choose, as you see here, block storage / hybrid. They're kind of the same thing. All block storage cubes are enabled for hybrid now. I have to configure it in the right way to take advantage of it, but I don't have to do anything to turn hybrid on. I can create a BSO. This is the next choice that I make. I give that cube a name, and then I can choose whether to do an outline, an LCM from the local computer that's mine. I can upload it from my computer, or I can first upload it to the inbox and then bring it in from there. If you're doing a large outline import, or if you're looking at a really large outline or a large LCM, I would recommend going ahead and uploading it into the inbox first, and then doing your import from there. There's quite a lot of work going on there, and it can take a while if you kind of are doing the upload, like almost like streaming that definition up from your local computer up into there. But it works either way. In the end, they generally work. Just one takes longer, is a little bit more liable to run into network latency issues or whatever as we go through. So before we do that, we can go into administrative services for Essbase, which is what this is. Check out that outline, make sure that it looks pretty. We've gotten rid of members we don't need anymore. We kind of make sure that it's ready to migrate into the new world. Once we get that done, it's pretty simple. To get the comprehensive lifecycle management backup, all I have to do is go into my workspace that's provided on my shared services. I go here into the shared services console. I find my Essbase cluster, and then I find the database that I want to do the export from. And then I can just basically choose everything that I want to export. And from there, I click on the export button, and I wind up with a chance to give it a name and drop it into the list of exports that have been done, the zip files. And then I can download that from Workspace, and from there move it up into the cloud planning environment. Otherwise, if I don't have access to Workspace, but I do have access to EAS, I can get the outline. All I have to do is open it up in administrative services, open up the outline, and then do a save as, and I can drop the outline itself onto my local disk drive. And from there, I'm in business again. I can upload it out there. As we say, we can upload it from the local computer directly, or we can get it into the inbox of the planning application or the cloud application. I can use the EPM Automate tool, that command line tool for managing my planning environment. I can take it from there, and I can upload that LCM or that OTL file out to the cloud first before I import it. So that tool is something that I would have installed locally or on a server somewhere on-prem, and then I use this tool. It's kind of the replacement for Maxell and S command. It takes over a lot of what they used to do, and I can automate that, including upload files. Then once I get it uploaded, it'll know at that point whether it's an LCM or an outline, so it'll kind of know what to do. All I have to do is click the create button. At that point, it works either way, whether it's the LCM or the outline. And it's going to churn around for a little while after I hit this button. And yeah, I did some hardcore kind of beta testing with Oracle on this functionality, so I've kind of seen it at its best, and I've seen it dealing with really, really large outlines. And when they are large, this step can take a while. So don't worry. Just sit back and let this run. On the really, really large ones, this might even time out and show an error, but then when you log out, log back in, everything looks fine. Speaking of everything looking fine, once this is all done and I log into the system again, I'm going to get something that looks an awful lot like a planning cloud application, because essentially that's what it is. We have just broken the chains on what the dimensional requirements are. So this is pretty cool. And I'll show you what that means in a second. The first thing that we want to do after verifying that the thing has been created is go ahead and navigate to the dimension editor and walk through and make sure that everything came through correctly. We want to make sure if we're doing a BSO that the dense and sparse settings came through, that the dimensions are in the right order, that their calculation priorities are set as we expect. And then at that point, we're in pretty good shape. We want to make sure that we got the right dimension mappings. The account is normally, it's picked up on that it is an account type dimension, and it will be tagged that within the planning world. Period dimension tagged as time, entity, as country, things like that. These are specific dimension types that planning applications, if they exist, they want to tag them with these kinds of dimension types, because it helps with certain planning functionality. So you want to make sure that those planning types got set correctly, or you can create those dimension type links inside of here if it didn't happen automatically on import. You can see here scenarios and versions in normal planning applications. Those are specific dimension types. In a free form, they're just brought in as normal custom dimensions, just like any other department or product dimension that might be in a planning app. So that's fine. That's what we are expecting on freeform. Now, if I don't have an outline file or an LCM backup, but I still want to start taking advantage of this, I want to build a new cube because I've got a data set that I want to analyze, and I've got the capability to create as many of these models as I want if I'm an enterprise customer. How do I get started from scratch? Well, the first thing I need to do is figure out what kind of cube I'm going to create. It will be either the BSO because I have hardcore calculations I want to do, or it's going to be a reporting cube. It's going to be ASO cube, which is mostly loading data and wanting to get the data back out of it really, really quickly for my reporting and analytic needs. Either way, I'm going to go through the same steps. I'm going to choose what kind of cube it is. I'm going to give it a name. And then I get the chance to start choosing the skeletal dimensional structure as I get started. Coming out of the gate, I'm going to have the opportunity to choose up to 3 dimensions provided for me, account, entity, and period. I can enable any of those, as you can see here. I'm choosing those, and then I can give them different names if I want. I'm not sure why you want to do that, because we can call things what they're called everywhere else in the world. It helps us understand what's going on there. But if you need to, you can change the names of those once they're enabled, and then we'll just continue on. We get to verify that, make sure that it understood of all of our selections, do a quick check that we're going to get what we're expecting. Again, we click that create button and kind of wait a little while this gets itself configured and put together, and that whole application gets spun up using our dimensional requirements. You can see here, once we get through that process, I should have this dimension type tagging for any of those 3 that I enabled. And from here, I can just continue on, starting with fleshing out these dimensions that I created. As you can see here, all I'm getting is the first member, the top of that dimension. So from here, I'm going to have to flesh that out. There's a lot of different ways to build dimensions in Hyperion planning. I can do imports through just a regular user interface. I can use data management to import that. If they're small, I can do them manually. Lots of possibilities there. But then now I can start building out the model, and then I begin to add dimensions right in here, as many as I need to support the model that I'm creating. So I've done all that. how do I make sure that this model is going to, support the load of data, is going to do what I need it to do? Just need to run through a few checks once things are imported and make sure things are going to act as I expect them to. Go ahead and look through the outline, order the dimensions. If you're an Essbase person now, you'll know what all this terminology means, and you need to go these to check to make sure that your database is going to be healthy coming out of the gate. Lots of different things that you'll be doing differently in this world than you were before. You won't have load rules anymore, even though you might be really used to that with Essbase. You're going to use data management now to get your data in. So you'll convert anything that you're doing through load rules over to data management. Filters in Essbase are really powerful. It's a way to control your security. Planning security is very similar, but there's no import for that. You're going to be configuring planning security through the dimension modeling and setting up security at the dimension level within planning itself. If you've got financial reports that you've created, you can import those. I would consider importing those into the narrative reporting and not the web version of FR that is available to you. Narrative is also available to you if you're on EPM Cloud Enterprise, and this is the future of reporting within this world. So I would look at this time while you're doing this, go ahead and about going into narrative reporting if you haven't already, getting these things imported into there. At the beginning would be a great idea, and then you can begin to move forward with narrative, tie that into this model, and take advantage of that great ability to assemble report packages and books in Word and PowerPoint in a lot more powerful way than we were able to do with the FR tech. Stuff that you're doing with Maxell, so anything you're automating on your Essbase world, you're going to have to convert that over to a combination of things, the EPM Automate tool that we talked about before, as well as jobs that you'll create within planning. Those will be, automated calc scripts that you'll run or exports. Lots of different things that you can create a job around. So some of those automation things will be done through jobs and some through EPM Automate. And then once you feel ready, you can migrate that thing. Smart View, just need to repoint that from what you're already using to the planning URL and grab that new cube. And then this is one thing we're doing with all of our planning applications is use the EPM Automate tool. It's going to take a full backup of itself overnight every night. But what we want to do is once it's back up from that backup, we want to take that snapshot and download it locally so that, for our own safety, we've got a backup of the backup. And we can have that rolling, so we can set that up as well. And again, that's the EPM Automate tool that does that. And then we get to the really cool stuff that's layered on top of our Essbase model. We can start to make dashboards. We can use the input form technology to create grids over the web for import, for review, kind of pre-formatted reports. Within the form designer, we can use what we call navigation flows, which is a really cool user interface element of the planning world out in the cloud, where I have vertical rows, vertical tabs and horizontal tabs, each one of those walking me through a certain form that I've defined. So I could choose one horizontal tab and then walk through all the forms that are associated with that, and then go to the next one, get a whole new set of forms of vertical tabs. So it's really cool way to organize forms and reports and walk people through a process or things that they need to see in order. I get this dashboard technology. I even get a new dashboard technology that's starting to roll out now, Dashboards 2.0, that's even more powerful than this. But I can layer this just like I can with the planning applications that I do that are normal. I can layer these dashboards on top of my freeform apps as well, and that's, in my opinion, really, really cool. This is a comparison between what things look like out on the web on these types of applications and what they look like in SmartView. So I can get access to the same data, the same forms, whether it's through my Excel add-in or whether it's over the web. And different types of users will use different ones. It's really a lot more powerful web interface than you may have seen if you've only lived in the on-prem world for Hyperion planning. This is really, really functional, and for the certain types of users that aren't doing analysis all the time, or they're in SmartView really, really infrequently, you can point them this way and you can get out of the need to maintain SmartView, whatever you need to do with folks all the time that are using these systems. You can kind of tailor what people are going to be working with, whether the web or SmartView, depending on what of user they are. Now, I told you I was going to tell you about hybrid Essbase, and this is really important if you haven't seen this before, or even if you have worked with hybrid in the past, either in on-prem Essbase databases or had your planning cloud application converted to hybrid for some particular need. This is all advanced from when hybrid first came to Essbase and from when hybrid first came to Planning Cloud. Once you're on the Enterprise Cloud SKU, you've got the newest hybrid engine available, and it's pretty good at this point. It's combining the best of both worlds between block storage databases with all the calculation capability and aggregate storage cubes that have all of the aggregation and speed of analysis capabilities. All I have to do once I get the cube created, if it's block storage, is make all of the upper level members in my sparse dimensions dynamically calced. So this is the worst thing in the world you can do to traditional BSO Essbase models, because I'm making it do those aggregations BSO sounds really, really slow, but a hybrid model knows how to do these on-the-fly aggregations, these dynamic calcs, really, really fast. So I'm turning it into a model that knows how to do both things, which is really great. I get to do all of these traditionally difficult calculations using the BSO tech, and then I don't have to aggregate all those dimensions and wait potentially hours before I'm able to retrieve data. So that's pretty cool. This is some of the advantages of going to hybrid. The databases themselves are much, much smaller, much leaner. I have far, far fewer blocks. Talk about that at a technical level. And then usability for end users is generally better. Performance is better, and it takes a lot less time to do the maintenance window, the backup, and the snapshot, and all of that stuff. So once you've converted to hybrid, you need to do a lot of testing and make sure that you're taking advantage of the technology, but you haven't busted your calculations. You need to make sure that you're getting the right data back out again. So extensive testing to make sure that the retrievals are going to work properly and the calculations are going to work properly. So you may have some changing to do to make sure that your data is correct again. Once the conversion is made, it's typically not difficult to make sure that things are happening in the right order. But it's really worth the payoff generally to go ahead and make that conversion and stop aggregating your database, your dimensions to the degree that you can. And take advantage of that engine that's doing both of those things. So that's one of the super great advantages right now of doing these freeform planning apps is I've been able to take pretty large databases and convert them to hybrid and have them become the data itself is maybe 1% of how much space it used to take up when we get rid of all those upper level members, and then a lot of things are a lot easier to work with once we do that. There's a little bit of a decision to help you figure out which of the engines to go with, because there are still use cases to do the traditional aggregate storage engine as well. And that's really about all the tech info about the freeform planning I can fit in for you in 35 minutes. Just a couple of more things I want to show you. As far as Essbase itself, it definitely has a future, right? It's currently released under 19C. It's not going anywhere anytime soon. There'll be a newer version released probably early next year, 21C, and there's some really cool features. There's innovation still going on there. So if you are an Essbase shop and you're going to stick with Essbase, there's still a future there. But if you're a really small Essbase shop and you've got just a couple of cubes and you do planning, or this is intriguing and you've never really done this sort of data modeling before, and bringing on Essbase is kind of a big deal, then you don't have to do that. You can begin to do very Essbase-like things within the EPM Cloud Enterprise suite, kind of get a best of both worlds. And I encourage you to go out and try it. You know, I've had my hands on it for a good while now, several months, and it's not perfect yet, but we're seeing people taking advantage of it and getting good use of it, especially being able to layer those user interface elements on top of it. The dashboards and the forms and the navigation flows I was referring to, all of that. Thank you very much for coming to this. We have a session at 1:45. You'll be receiving an email. We're going to do a 2 o'clock Central. We're going to just kick back and just kind of do a Zoom with no real agenda and just kind of socialize and do some networking. And we did this before on one of our other virtual conferences, and it's really cool. So I encourage you to come to that. And we are also doing a new Hyperion Solutions conference for 2020, getting all the old band back together from the last time they had Hyperion Solutions, which was in 2007. I will be speaking because I did speak at the 2007 convention, and invite you as well to submit a topic that you might want to talk about right here on epm.bi/Hyperion. We've got a pretty tight deadline if you want to do it. We're going to be closing the abstract submissions tomorrow, but I encourage you to get out there. It's going to be really cool. It's multi-days, multi-track, lots and lots of people speaking. It's going to be cool. I'll take questions now. I have a few. You can drop any questions that you want into the chat, and our intrepid behind-the-scenes crew will be picking up on your questions and relaying them to me, and I'll try to answer anything that you want to know about. I'm going to restrict it to Essbase functionality delivered through freeform planning modules in EPM Cloud Enterprise. I could answer other questions, but I'm going to restrict it to that topic here today, and we'll cover philosophy and Greek mythology and the best techniques to play Pokemon Go for some other time.
Great. Thank you so much, Joe. That was a great presentation. Any questions for Joe?
It sounds like I have completely educated everyone.
You have made everyone as informed as they need to be. So thank you, Joe, so much. We really do appreciate your participation in this event, and I hope everybody else has a great day.
It's a great pleasure. Thanks everyone for attending.